You can't get here fast enough. You can't get here fast enough.
In the shadows of the indie music scene, few figures loom as hauntingly as Jason Molina. His voice, often a fragile, aching tremble, expanded the idea of what it means to reveal your soul. And there's no clearer, more painful vision of his inner world than his album Lioness, released under his song's Ohia moniker on January 17, 2000. This album is Jason's brutal, brilliant, beautiful confession, a glimpse into the abyss of longing, of heartbreak, and of quiet desperation. Hi, I'm Andy Fenstermaker, host of Poetic Wax, a weekly music history series where I dig into the record collection I started in the 1990s to explore the history of an album, a song, or band from within. Lioness is an intimate letter from a tormented soul, and today we're pulling my copy of Love and Work, the Lioness Sessions box set, to explore this haunting record, its creation, its themes, and how the legacy of Jason Molina is forever etched into its grooves. Jason Molina was born in Lorain, Ohio, a quiet town near Lake Erie, whose steel mills and fogged-up windows would ultimately find their way into his music. He was raised on hard work and Rust Belt grit, but his mind was always somewhere else, somewhere darker, deeper, more resonant. I love this quote from Molina from a 1999 fanzine called Copper Press. I grew up in a burnt-out shipbuilding and steel-making town, profoundly important to my music. It is the environment where I learned to walk away from the darkness. It is a place of water and storms and falling red sky and lightning. I learned to write music there about the world because out there it was immense and sudden. I learned that misery is not to capture but to learn about. Lorraine and I have an unspoken agreement to always remain in each other's lives. It's a hard place. In the mid-90s, Molina became the first artist signed to a fledgling label called Secretly Canadian. They took a chance on him, and in many ways, he became the label's heart and soul. His work with Secretly Canadian marked the beginning of something rare, a partnership that allowed him to craft albums that were more like confessionals than typical records. Together they built a foundation for what would become a catalog of deeply personal, raw music, and Lioness is one of its many striking pillars. A friend of mine once theorized that those of us who tend toward making melancholy music are the converse of clowns, crying on the outside, laughing on the inside. And to an extent, it's true. Songwriting can be a cathartic business. You sing the blues to let them go. It must be a trait Jason and I shared back then, because my memories of that tour, and indeed of any times we met, are of lots of laughter, tall tales, a touch of gossip, and a bit of Black Sabbath. It's hard to look at the work of someone like Molina and categorize and rank it. Didn't It Rain, Ghost Tropic, Magnolia Electric Company, all distinct, distinguished, destitute. Each stands on its own while making up the greater cohesive body of work under the song's Ohia moniker, each worthy in their own right of deeper exploration and contemplation. Lioness was born during a time when Molina was navigating the tumultuous waters of his own emotional landscape. Recorded at Chem 19 Studios in Scotland, Lioness draws from a well of heartache that seems bottomless. I suggested we go to Arab Strap's regular studio, recently acquired by our label Chemical Underground, and record there. And thus the roots of Lioness were laid down, about 20 minutes south of Glasgow, in mid-October 1998. We set up and recorded everything as live as we could, and just left Jason and Jeff to get on with it. For the most part, we, Arab Strap, were little more than an audience. In this record, we hear Molina pushing himself into even more raw, more vulnerable territory than before. Once he described his songwriting as building an altar out of everything that hurts, and Lioness, that pain almost feels sacred. The songs are minimalist, centered around sparse, bluesy guitars and Molina's aching vocals. I mean, Songs Ohia has always been like that. It's as if every note, every pause is another open wound. Indeed, the Lioness finds Jason in a busy exploratory phase, honing his songwriting, broadening his band and palette, and trying out studios. Before finishing the mix for his album, he recorded and released Axes and Ace, a new album with a fuller band. In the same year as The Lioness came the improvised Protection Spells and the dark, spare Ghost Tropic, all with different lineups. Jason was always a prolific writer, and there would be greater work to come. Unlike his later works under the Magnolia Electric Company moniker, which had a slightly broader range of instrumentation and production, Lioness still feels intentionally and incredibly stripped down. It's as if Molina's only goal was to pour out his sorrow, unfiltered. Yet, even in the sparse moments, there's an incredible power. You can almost feel the Lioness's ferocious teeth tearing shreds from your emotions. And the Sunday Times put it best. The Lioness has the power to turn the most brightly lit room into a delicate shade of blue. Let's dive into a few tracks that best showcase the soul of Lioness. First, Being in Love. With a title that almost feels ironic, the song moves slowly, Molina's voice low and resigned. Being in love, he sings, means you are completely broken. For Molina, love and pain are inseparable, a theme that threads throughout the entire album. It's a raw declaration of vulnerability, and it sets the tone for what's to come. Then there's the track Lioness. Here, Molina sings of a mythical creature, a metaphoric lioness who may be a lover, an addiction, or even his own fear, his demons. To me, though, it's always been about love, gripped by an obsession of anxiety, of longing. Want my last look to be the moon in your eyes. Want my heart to break if it must break in your jaws. Want you to lick my blood off your paws. It is for me the eventual truth. It is that look of the lioness to her man across the Nile. If you can't get there fast enough, I will swim to you, he sings, a voice quivering, sometimes barely a whisper, and sometimes an agonizing wail.
I will swim to you. I will swim to you.
It's a haunting image capturing how love, or perhaps even his own inner demons, held a kind of power over him that he could never fully shake. And in Coxcomb Red, an equally haunting song, we get a further glimpse into Molina's longing. Your hair is coxcomb red, your eyes are viper black, he chants repeatedly. This isn't just about solitude, it's about the type of longing that eats away at you from inside. Like with Lioness, you're left with the impression that with love and longing, Molina recognizes, accepts, and even welcomes the dangers that lurk in his objects of desire. Dangers far beyond the grief he shares through his voice. It hints of the classic phrase, when you're wearing rose-tinted glasses, red flags just look like flags. Like much of the work of Jason Molina, when Lioness was released, it didn't have a mainstream audience. It didn't have mainstream attention. Molina's music was never for the masses, but for those who did find it, Lioness was a revelation. Molina himself became a mythical persona, a true cult favorite among fans who found comfort in its vulnerability. They recognized his emotional depth, and in that recognition, they saw themselves. And honestly, I was one of those few. We relate to music in our own ways, and to me, Lioness is always about love, whether or not that was Molina's intention. Yet there is no denying the potential that he was actually singing about his own inner demons. Underneath his music, there was a darkness that Molina fought constantly within himself, a battle with alcohol and the crushing weight of his own thoughts. In the years following Lioness, Molina's struggle with alcoholism grew more intense, and his music became an even darker reflection of his soul. He tried to exorcise his demons through his songs, but sometimes it seemed the demons were the ones writing the lyrics. They were the ones navigating the way. Alcohol was, in many ways, his silent collaborator, and you can feel its shadow on Lioness. It's a tragic irony. He turned his suffering into beauty, but that beauty came at an unimaginable cost. Jason Molina's story does not have a happy ending. His battle with alcoholism eventually claimed his life in 2013, leaving a void in the music world. But his legacy lives on through his songs, and in Lioness and in his other works, Molina left behind a roadmap of his own struggles, a guide for others who might find themselves lost in a similar darkness. His music continues to resonate not just because it's beautiful, which it very much is, but because it's so brutally honest. He didn't shy away from his pain. Instead, he put it on display for everyone to see. And while he may be gone, his music remains, an imprint of a tormented soul that gave a beautiful offering to the world. A terrible self-sacrifice that left a rose in its wake. Whoever was in the band or behind the mixing desk, whatever approach he was trying out, and however many strings he had on the guitar, there was always one constant: his voice. A tender, naturally plaintive voice, but reliable and sanguine too. When he sang, his songs were lament, love song, and lullaby at once. A voice that stands by you when the dark brings its demons. A voice that holds your hand till dawn. A preacher, a philosopher, a friend. The road can be a lonely place, but you meet some beautiful people along the way. In Lioness, Jason Molina crafted an album that serves as both a love letter and a confession. It's a deeply personal exploration of his darkest moments, his greatest demons, and his most intense longings, all transformed into music that's as haunting as it is moving. Through his songs, Molina offered a piece of himself, raw and unfiltered, to anyone who would listen. And in doing so, he left behind a legacy that's as powerful as it is heartbreaking.